So I have this challenge when I'm talking to my car, which is I just want to talk to it the way I talk to AI, but it just wants me to say, do you want to reply to your message, yes or no? So it's almost as though we have to train ourselves also for the context of our tools. My car is not as smart as my phone. It will be shortly, I'm sure. All right, so context stacking. So this is something that's really helpful. Again, if you have questions, please feel free to put those in. One of the things that can be frustrating, I say frustrating, and all of our worlds sort of changed 3-4 years ago when this remarkable technology came out. One of the things that can be frustrating is you have a whole bunch of stuff that you want AI to do, and you're working back and forth in a very conversational format saying, okay, do more of this, do less of this, but you feel like you're doing the same thing over and over. So in that example of marketing copy, you feel like you're asking it for the same things over and over. One of the things that you can do is actually prepare sort of these knowledge blocks, or it's called context stacking, ahead of time. So things that you do repeatedly, maybe, for example, you send out team communications, and you want to make sure that your team communications always start with a little recap, have a voice that sounds like you. You could even put in an example of how you talk or how you communicate, but make sure it has like this team tagline every single time. All of that you can stack into a single document that you can use repeatedly so that you don't have to recreate that every single time. I'm going to show you an example of this that I had prepared in advance. And here are, so this is actually another pro tip, which is how do you get your context stacking? Like, how do you make sure your context stacking makes sense for what you want it to do? And does anyone know what the answer is? You actually can ask AI to help you with AI. That was one of the revelations for me in learning how to work differently and more effectively, was that I was trying to figure out AI by myself. I was like, well, maybe if I do this, this will happen. Or let me look for a YouTube video to teach me how to do this other thing with AI. The best way to use AI effectively is to ask AI. And so one of these things I did is I said, create an example of a context file for this type of company, right? And so it actually came up with a whole scenario for this pretend company that we're going to be using for several examples now. And you'll notice it has a whole series of things in it. And when we get to sort of the quick and dirty version of bot creation later, you'll notice a lot of these same things. So it's like, who are we, or who do you want the bot to be later, right? Company name, mission, core value prop. You could fill this out as much as you want it, right? This is all of those things that you want it to consider when you're moving forward. It has the brand voice in there, so professional yet empathetic. I love that. That's really just a sentence explaining what that is, but you can get into much more detail. Action-oriented, right? You could add additional context to how you want the language to be, clear and accessible, avoiding consultant speak. There's situations wherein maybe you want it to have consultant speak. I've actually used prompts before that have said, okay, take this outline and create a slide-by-slide McKinsey deck for me. So McKinsey is one of these major consulting firms. If you want to structure something in sort of that McKinsey voice, you can put it in a way in which, what are your audience expectations, right? And then who is your target audience? This is really important. Who are you, or who do you want your bot or the prompt to come, or the results to come from in terms of a voice, and who is your audience, right? And so for this for this consulting company, I prompted it and it came up with government, education, and nonprofits. And if we look up here, that is part of the original prompt that I put together. We're going to be writing consulting proposals to get consulting business from these specific types. And it goes on and it takes, like when I said education, it makes it much more specific and it says trigger words, right? Here are words that are constantly being used that we should be using in our proposals as well. What do we sell? It made this up, obviously. We sell roadmaps for funding cycles, and digital transformation impact assessment. What is the structure rules? This is really important. What do you want it to spit out? Say you don't know what you want it to spit out. Tell it the goal and ask it to come up with a series of suggestions for what the outputs should be and how they should be structured, right? Use AI to help you with AI. And then the do not do's. And this is important because it can just be sort of annoying over time if you see habits. There are certain things that certain specific words that I actually ask AI to avoid. I don't know if anyone has noticed the prevalence of furthermore or nevertheless in sort of general AI talk. So you can create a short list of those and say, don't use these words as well, right? Then it tells you how to use it, right? So many of you may have noticed that when you're working with AI, it has started telling you like how to edit your own prompts or other things to consider as you're going through, or how to actually use the tools. And so here it says, paste context file here, right? That's what we would do. You would paste the link to it, or you could actually copy and paste the whole context file. Based on this, write this, right? Based on this, write this, okay? So now you have your context file. And I am jumping back and forth between 15 tabs again. All right. So some of the examples for that are things like project details. Like say you're writing a grant and you want to make sure that your answers are hitting all of the elements of the grant. You could provide those specific things. Timelines, this thing has to occur within a year, or it should have a 3-year grant horizon. You know, you can get as specific as you want in that context file. Now it's important to know we're not at bots yet. So this is how you would be doing it just by creating that context file that you're going to use in a repeatable fashion. Client profiles, that's really important. So you know how we got into audience. The more specific you can get about audience, the more helpful it's going to be in terms of your output. So it's sort of like data, right? Like working with data in general. The better your inputs, the better your outputs are going to be. Right. Okay, so this is our context. We created that context file, and then I am going to show you what we're going to do with it next, which is I'm going to put it in a separate file. You know, you could be doing this in, it doesn't matter. I just happen to be doing it in Google. You could be doing this, and you could be using this Word document, whatever, you know, Apple universe, whatever universe you live in. You create this, and then what you want to be able to do is you can copy paste this whole thing, or in some cases you can actually pop it into something, you know, pop it or refer directly to the file. We're going to do something fun from this, where we're going to use this context file. Well, first, I'll just do an example of it. So we're going to copy this whole thing, and we're going to put it into our friend, and we're going to see what it comes up with. I'm also going to do this in a Microsoft universe, so you can see sort of the differences in this. So I'm going to start a new chat. And I'm going to say, using this context file, create for me a consulting proposal to do strategic planning with a range of community stakeholders at, okay, I'm going to put in the context file first, but then I'm going to pick, we're in Ohio, so let's do Ohio State University. What is there? Here we go. Here we go. Consulting at Ohio State University. All right, real time, everybody. Let's see what it comes up with. One of the things that I love doing when you're working with this stuff is not like accelerating it. Like, this is what's happening for realsies in real time. You can also ask it to show thinking. Probably all of you know this already, but if you don't, it's sort of telling you what it's doing, which is fun. It's browsing osu.edu, which I love as well. It's understanding the core identity. This is so fascinating. So this is stuff that you could do, right? It's something magical. It would just take you hours and hours. This is a really good starting point. You can do QA on this. And in fact, that's really the last thing that we're going to focus on is how to QA in AI. And so this is what it spits out. It has its executive summary. Here is the deliverable or the result. Here's how we're going to go about understanding this. What's our methodology? Why us? The investment, projected investment, and the conclusion. So it's real simple, like real small. You could make this context file much, much deeper. You could give it much more background information about the university, and then it will spit out, again, things that are more detailed for your specific use case. And you're doing that based on this context file. Now, you can improve the context file as you go. You can, notice that the language isn't exactly the format that you want, or you always want it to come up with a proposal that costs the client $1 million or whatever. So you can always do a variety of things to edit your context stack as you go.